paid me to organize and make this thing a better place, make Georgia a better state for all of us to live in. And as soon as I start trying to make my workplace a better place, you're like, no, you got to go.
What you just heard was a comment from a former employee of the New Georgia Project, whose leader this week really stunned the Georgia political world when he announced his impending resignation. And that is our top story for this edition of Political Update here on Atlanta News First for Wednesday, February 26th. I'm Tim Darnell, and joined as always by our friend and colleague and respected anchor and journalist Rick Folbaum. Rick, before we get into the New Georgia Project and its history, I want us to hear this package and this report from our own Bridget Spencer.
Francis Johnson, who's head of the New Georgia Project, tells Atlanta News First it's his intent to resign. The organization is known for their efforts on voting rights and other social issues.
It made me feel good. It's the right thing for him to do.
Jasmine Keith was let go from NGP recently, and she says it was in retaliation for trying to unionize.
I am glad that he is stepping down. I think this is a graceful way to do it, but before he does step down, he needs to reinstate the former employees who were let go.
The organization has had a controversial run lately. Before the latest string of firings, it was just fined $300,000 after the Georgia Ethics Commission says NGP illegally did election work for Stacey Abrams. In a statement to us, Johnson says, quote, "It's time. Not only have I served longer than both my predecessors, the organization must retool following last year's election." Keith says regardless of the controversy that came before her, she joined the organization to remain nonpartisan and just help get out the vote.
But I have a calling, I feel like, on my life to organize communities. And so with that calling, I'm not tied to any party.
Bridget Spencer, Atlanta News First.
Rick, that was Bridget Spencer reporting on the news. They came out earlier this week that Francis Johnson, who has been the head of the New Georgia Project for several years, has kind of abruptly submitted his resignation that really, as of this point, we don't know when it is going to take effect. But the New Georgia Project was founded, as we know, in 2013 by Stacey Abrams, who was at that time a Democratic state lawmaker from DeKalb County, representing that area in the General Assembly. And she would later use that organization to launch what was an almost successful gubernatorial run in 2018. Now the organization is faced with a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And you know, you look at the way that this organization was really able in 2020 to assist in helping to make Georgia the battleground political state that it's become. It was efforts to rally the base, the grassroots, Democratic voters, mainly black voters here in the state of Georgia, getting them registered, getting them to the polls, and it didn't really result in a victory, of course, for its founder, Stacey Abrams, but it did help to propel Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock to the U.S. Senate in 2020. And so this is an organization that really, as far as Democrats are concerned, did a lot of good, but over the last 12 months or so, it has run into some major problems, including one of the largest fines ever leveled against an organization of this kind, a campaign finance law violation, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars fined as a result of their endorsing Stacey Abrams' gubernatorial bid directly. That was something that the organization was not allowed to do under campaign finance laws, and so it paid that fine. Stacey Abrams, who, as you mentioned, helped to found the organization, has since stepped back away from it. Raphael Warnock, who held a leadership position, has stepped away from that. And so you sort of see the writing on the wall here as some of the biggest Democratic names in the state of Georgia have tried to distance themselves. And of course, now we have the leader of the the group announcing his own resignation. And so what is the future of this group? It's really hard to tell. It'd be very interesting to see if somebody steps in to fill the void, who steps in to take over the leadership position there, and what kind of effectiveness this organization has as we head towards a very important midterm election when John Ossoff is actually up for re-election. And so Democrats certainly would like to try to boost his candidacy for re-election as much as possible. Whether they'll have this organization to help out in those efforts remains to be seen.
Well, we have the statement from Francis Johnson, who is the head, well, soon to be former head, we imagine, of the New Georgia Project. He cited several reasons, the fact that he had served in that leadership position longer than any of its predecessors, but also cited the results of the 2024 presidential election that saw Donald Trump carry the state of Georgia by a sizable margin, and the fact that we do have a governor's election coming up in 2026. There are a number of rumored possible Democratic candidates who may be seeking the gubernatorial position. Some of the names we're hearing include possibly Georgia Congresswoman Lucy McBath, former DeKalb County CEO, and former statewide commissioner Michael Thurman, several others. But we're looking at the 2026 election. We have a gubernatorial election in 2026. This is an organization that was founded to recruit a high number of historically underserved voting blocks. So what do you think the future holds for the Democratic Party here in Georgia and the New Georgia Project?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think that if this organization sort of falls by the wayside and is determined to be ineffective heading into this next election cycle, there will be some other group that will step up to fill that void. You're talking about a very, very recent history where efforts were successful in helping to really drive out black voters here in Georgia, and the realization that Democrats can win statewide office if they turn out black voters. And so, that is a formula that has proven effective, not in every single race, but in a lot of them. And so it's something that I think, someone will duplicate. If not for this organization, then another organization will step up and try to, again, fill that void and help to come up with ways to motivate black voters to get out and participate in an election that they really could be the determining factors if they show up in large numbers.
We're talking about the 2026 governor's race, and another candidate, a rumored candidate, though not confirmed, is Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, widely seen to be possibly a gubernatorial contender in 2026 when current incumbent Governor Brian Kemp is term limited from seeking a third term. The Georgia State Senate earlier this week passed one of Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones' legislative priorities. That is a Georgia version of the Department of Governmental Efficiency that has garnered so many headlines nationwide under the leadership of President Donald Trump and one of his top unofficial advisors, Elon Musk. The state senate, Georgia, I should say Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, is going out of his way to say that his version of a DOGE or DOGE or Department of Governmental Efficiency is a little bit different than that has been proposed nationwide. Rick, this is a cornerstone, one of the legislative priorities for the Lieutenant Governor. What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, DOGE, branding is everything in politics. And right now, as popular as President Trump's campaign promises were to shrink the size of the federal government and to make it more efficient, the way that Elon Musk is going about it, to some, is great. But to a lot of people, it's really sort of taking a sledgehammer to a situation that really requires more of a scalpel. These mass layoffs at agencies that perform vital functions when it comes to public health, for example, the CDC based here in Atlanta that has seen so many of its employees let go. That is something that a lot of people are hearing and reading about now and saying, well, wait a minute, we want the government to be smaller, we want the government to be more efficient, but we also want the government to protect us against threats, things like the avian flu, for example, and other public health emergencies. If we pare down the staffing at these different organizations and federal agencies around the country, will they be able to do the work that is so important? And so as a result of the public opinion sort of turning in some ways against that, the label, the branding of DOGE, here in Georgia, Lieutenant Governor Jones is sort of also stepping away from that those terms. He's not talking about DOGE. He's using different terminology, but really the main goal is the same, and that is to be smaller, leaner, and better when it comes to our government and the way that taxpayer dollars are spent. This bill that you mentioned is sort of a pet project of the lieutenant governor, who you also mentioned is strongly considering a run for governor, since Brian Kemp is not able to run because of term limits. And so this is something that he is pushing, and he's getting a lot of pushback, as you might imagine, from Democrats who are saying, look at what's happening at the federal level with Elon Musk's DOGE efforts. We do not want the same thing at the statewide level. And so that is the concern with this bill. But of course, Republicans have control over both the state House and the state Senate. This is a bill that right now is going to go to the House for more debate. And the basic gist of it is that any rule that would have more than $1 million of economic impact over 5 years would be automatically halted until lawmakers are able to go through it and approve it. And so it really is, the idea here is to put more of a microscope on the spending at some of these government agencies to make sure that they are spending their money wisely. And so, Republicans are running on this, just as President Trump ran on it in the 2024 election. Republicans are sort of carrying that message through here at the statewide level. We're seeing it in other states around the country as well. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but it does seem certain that at least some form of this bill is likely to pass the Republican-controlled state legislature.
Let's take the analogy of the microscope a little bit further, because what we saw at the end of last week, and it's continuing to reverberate today as we continue this edition of Political Update here on Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com. We are all familiar, and we saw all the reports of Elon Musk directing federal employees to submit a list of 5 bullet points of things that they had accomplished over the past week. Looking at it from the other side, people like you and I and everyone in the news business and everyone in the private sector are used to accountability and to really quantifying what we do on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. It's really just basic accountability. Why do you think the issue of federal employees being required to submit a list of what they accomplished over the past week or so, or else face termination, why do you think that has caused such a cataclysmic response among federal workforce and the federal workforces and the unions that represent them?
Well, I mean, look, people don't like change, and they don't like to have their jobs taken away. And so I think that there are a lot of people who view these efforts as, sort of an opportunity for unelected leaders, and in this case with Elon Musk, he was not elected. He's not even
Not even a member of the
approved
cabinet, has no official government title.
no official government title. He did not have to go through Senate confirmation the way that the other members of the president's cabinet had to be approved by the U.S. Senate. And so here is this man who was obviously very accomplished, one of the wealthiest people in the entire world, and I think that a lot of people admire him for that, and I think that a lot of people resent him for that, and that's just sort of comes with the territory when you are very, very successful. Some people are going to love you, some people not so much, and I think that some people see the efforts on Elon Musk's part as really sort of overstepping what should be within bounds for for someone who is really just an advisor to President Trump. But like you said, I think that a lot of people are in support of this because look, it's not like he's asking them to write 20-page term paper on what their job is about and what they did last week. He's asking for bullet points. And I think to a lot of people, that's reasonable. Look, if you can't provide a list of 5 things that you accomplished in your job last week, some people would feel like maybe you shouldn't have that job. Maybe your job isn't essential. Maybe the salary that you get from the federal from taxpayers could be better spent somewhere else or returned to taxpayers in the terms of in the form of a tax refund. So I think that it's really something that it sort of depends on where you stand and how you look at things. Certainly nobody, like I said, wants to feel as though they've been threatened, and I think that the pushback that we're seeing is because a lot of people feel like this is a threat, rather than a chance to sort of reassess the federal workforce. It used to be for so many years, Tim. I'm sure you have run into people as a journalist over the years who have these federal jobs. And it used to be that you would get one of these positions, and it was really a job for life. There was really no way to get rid of these people once they were part of the federal bureaucracy. And I think that what the Trump administration is trying to do is change that and say, look, we understand that the federal workforce plays a vital role, but we want to make sure that it is doing so efficiently and that we don't have a ton of waste. And so that's, sort of how they're framing it. But how you see it, how you view it, really depends on your own personal situation.
And I'm sure we're going to continue to discuss this. This is not the first time or the last time that you and I have talked over the issue of government efficiency and the entire really revolutionary type of approach that the Trump administration is taking, after winning very sizably and very handily the 2024 presidential election. Very quickly, some of the other headlines we're following for you here on Atlanta News First. Late Tuesday night, the U.S. House passed a Republican-sponsored budget that includes massive tax and spending cuts. This is a major legislative victory for President Trump and U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson. Closer to home, the head of the Georgia Supreme Court, Michael Boggs, announced yesterday that he is resigning his term at the end of March. Governor Brian Kemp will appoint a successor fairly soon. The Trump administration has reportedly restored funding for historically black colleges and universities, also known as HBCUs, for students who are studying agriculture under the very strong recommendation from Georgia U.S. Senator John Ossoff, as Rick, you just mentioned, is up for re-election in less than 2 years. And finally, former Republican U.S. Senator from Georgia, Kelly Loeffler, has been officially confirmed as President Donald Trump's head of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Those are some of the other headlines we're continuing to follow here on Atlanta News First. For this edition of Political Update, I'm Tim Darnell. For Rick Folbaum, reminding you that you can catch Political Update every Wednesday at 1:30 here on our YouTube channel channel and also on all of your streaming devices. And also listen and download all of the Atlanta News First podcast, Behind the Investigation, Decatur Dish, Atlanta News First, and Political Update on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, or wherever you download and listen to your podcasts.